All right, guys, welcome back. We are going to start lesson 9.2 today. But before we get into the lesson, I want to do a little review because I've noticed with some of the assignments that you guys are getting points marked wrong because of the way that you're rounding. And so a lot of times you're like, I got the answer right, but it's marking it wrong because I'm not rounding correctly. So I'm going to do a quick little review of what are the place values. And this is just a place value chart that I got off Google. I'm allowing you to use that as well. So let's say that we can just make up a number here. And I put the place values here in case you forgot what they were, right? So let's just make up a number. My favorite number is 55, and we'll make it 143, right? So that's 55.143. If it said round to the nearest 10th place, that means that 10th place is the last number I want. So then the number would be 55.1. If it said round to the nearest 1000th, that means that 1000th place is the last number I want. So it would be 55.143. If it said round to the nearest whole number, then I would just have 55 because whole number means everything before this decimal, right? So that's what I want you to pay attention to. When it's asking you to submit your answer and it said to the nearest 10th, that means that 10th place is the last digit you should have. All right, so now we're going to get ready to get into the actual lesson. So we're starting in lesson 9.2. I want to do a little review though before we get into this. So we just did a lesson all about circumference. And remember, circumference is pretty much like the perimeter for circles, right? It's the distance all the way around. Now we're going to get into area. So little reminder, if I had a square, well, let's make it a rectangle because a square is harder for me to draw. And let's say it was 4 by 6 inches, right? The perimeter of that would just be the distance all the way around. I would add up all the sides, right? I would end up with 20 inches. My area is all the space inside, right? So I want to know how much space that takes up. For the area of a rectangle or square, you just multiply. So that's 6 times 4. That would give me 24. All right? That is how you find the area. Area is just the space inside. So this lesson, we're going to be talking all about how to find the area of a circle. How do we find out how much space is inside the circle? Okay, so again, area is just the space inside. So we're talking about area of a circle. So the area of the circle, you find it by the product of pi and the square of the radius. So remember, pi from lesson 1, we're using 3.14. Right? You can also use 22 over 7. I think it's easiest this way because when you round, you'll get the right answer. But when you're doing mental math, sometimes it's easier if it is a multiple of 7, and you can do that as well. All right, and then the square of a number. In case we forget what squared means from earlier this year, all that means is that you multiply a number by itself. So if anything is to the power of 2, or another way of saying that is squared, that means you multiply it by itself. So r squared just equals r times r, right? So now remembering those things, we can easily solve some area problems here. So let's go ahead and start with some examples. Okay, so first one, let's say we have a radius of 7 centimeters, and I want to know the area. So again, my formula for area is pi r squared, okay? Make sure you really study these formulas so you don't confuse circumference with area come the test. For right now, and you can obviously go back and look at your notes in your book, but I would hate for you to get the two confused, all right? Because they are kind of close to pi r squared. So we know area equals pi times r squared. So 3.14 times our r is 7 squared. And remember that Squared just means you multiply it by yourself. So 7 times 7 is 49. So 3.14 times 49 would be our answer, and we would get about 154 centimeters. Right, there you go. Centimeters squared, actually. So now let's say we were given a diameter, though. And let's say that that diameter was 26 inches. Okay? And now we need to find the area. Remember, diameter is just the radius twice. The radius is half the diameter. So if we want to figure out what that radius is, we would just divide the diameter by 2, which means our radius is 13. All right? So now that we have the radius, we can find the area. Area equals pi r squared. So that's going to be 3.14 times 13 squared, which is going to be 3.14 times 169. Your answer is going to be about this. All right, there you go. So simple as that. Finding the area of the circle, you have a simple equation. Just pay attention to if they gave you the diameter or the radius. If they gave you the diameter, you have to start by figuring out what the radius is. All right, so now I have some examples here for you that I want you to try. Pause, and then I'll give you the answers. For number 2, it says use 22/7 for pi. Again, you can do that. It makes it easier for the multiplication and dividing if it's a multiple of 7, just like 28 is, but you do not have to. I use 3.14, and that is fine. All right, so pause, solve those, and then come back and check your answers. All right, so these should be about the answers you got. I didn't give you a specific place to round to, and so if you didn't round exactly how I did, that's okay. I just round to the nearest whole number. So it should be around 113 feet squared and then 616 feet squared, right? But pay attention to your homework questions to where it does tell you to round. So now we're going to move on to the second type of example, and then we're done with the lesson. Okay, so remember in our last lesson, we were finding out the perimeter of these semicircles, right? And remember when we did that, we would find the circumference of the whole circle and then divide it by 2, and then you add that little side on to it, right? Now we're finding the area. We want the space in between it. All we have to do is find the area of the total circle and then divide it by 2 because it's half of that circle. No adding after that. All right, so again, this is another one where I really want you to go back and make sure you understand how to find the perimeter of these and how to find the area of these so you don't confuse the two. The math isn't really hard. I would just hate on a test that you would think about doing one thing and do the wrong one. All right, so let's go through one of these and then we're done. So I want to find out the area of this semicircle. I'm going to start by finding the area of what the whole circle would be. And again, that's just pi r squared. So they gave us our diameter this time. We need the radius. Remember, radius is half the diameter. So we have a diameter of 30. Our radius for this semicircle is going to be 15 feet. All right, so now I can just go ahead and find my area, pi r squared, which is going to be 3.14 times 15 squared, right? Which would end up being 3.14 times 225. Now, so now that'll give us about 706.5 as our area. But remember, we only want the area of the semicircle, so that's half of it. So we're going to go ahead and divide that by 2, and our answer would be around 353. All right, feet squared, because it's area. And that's it. You pretty much find the area of the circle and then divide it by 2 because it's half the circle. So I'm going to give you a couple examples and you're going to try those. Okay, so now go ahead, try to find the area of these semicircles, pause, and then come back and check your answer.